Hey everyone, this is the Black Manga Critic here with another video for the channel. And today is Manga Monday. So that means we're going to be reviewing a manga of my choice. Unless you guys have a manga that you'd love me to review, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But for this video, we're going to be looking at Akira Toriyama's Sandland. And this is a much lesser known manga than the widely popular Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump. And even Dr. Slump isn't particularly popular in the United States. So you sort of get the idea that Sandland isn't something that is well known by anyone who isn't like a really intense fan of Akira Toriyama's work. So I guess just a little bit in terms of the history of it. Sandland is published in 2000. And it is a short manga story. So basically, that means that it's not going to be 80 volumes like One Piece or 60 something volumes like Bleach or anything like that. It is a single volume, and it encompasses 13 chapters. And one note is that in the beginning of the volume, Toriyama tells us that it was a real chore to work on Sandland because you can see it in the artwork. I mean, the artwork is really impeccable. I mean, there's a lot that he's doing just with the tank alone, and you see that he talks about the fact that like it was really difficult to draw that tank, and you can see how difficult it was. But you appreciate that because everything really comes through. All of his work on the artistic end really comes through. So with that being said, I just want to talk about three things in relation to what I appreciate about Toriyama working on the short manga form. So the first thing that I generally love about this manga is that Toriyama really doesn't take too much time going into the characters' backstories or the lore of the world or anything like that, so far as he needs to. Right? I mean, probably the one character that he really sort of goes into deep detail with is General Shiba. And I'm just going to call him General Shiba because that's, like that's his real title. And it's important to the story because we know that he's initially called Rao, but I mean, General Shiba is his title. It's important because it sets him as an individual who is extremely important to the world, as it stands, and to the world as it did stand. So outside of General Shiba, he doesn't really go in depth with that. Like Prince, he's a pretty straightforward character. So far in his role as being Prince of the Demons, right? We don't really get too much in terms of his motivations outside of the fact that he's a very sort of simple-minded kind of character. He's very morally straightforward. For the most part, he's a demon, but he kind of has a pure heart. So there really isn't much in the way of moral complexity or thinking about certain ethical questions in the way that something like a manga like Parasite or Hunter x Hunter or manga like those would do. The second thing that I think Toriyama does really well is that he's very straightforward about morally straightforward like topics, right? So he's not about going into, like I said, like again, he's not going into the moral complexities of war, of genocide, or these things. He is very much so blunt in that certain things are wrong, right? The abuse of military power is wrong. Puppet governments are wrong. Bombing a village like Sky High is wrong. Creating water scarcity for financial gain, wrong, right? So these things are we know that they're wrong, right? And because this is such a short story, because this is such a short manga story, Toriyama is very much so aware of the fact that they have to sort of be morally clear. Otherwise, he doesn't have enough time to really go into, let's say our world moral complexities regarding like certain things, right? The third thing that I really think, the third thing that I really appreciate is that he really takes care of direct confrontations relatively quickly. And that's something that I talk about in a lot of my other videos in relation to longer manga stories, right? Good, let's say like battle shonen stories, take care of battles in a relatively short time, right? So if we look at something like Hunter x Hunter, those battles, even though they're very, very intricate, they end relatively quickly. We don't spend a lot of time with them. But if we think about stories like One Piece, Naruto, even Bleach, like those battles take a really long time to finish, relative to something like a Hunter x Hunter, right? They take a really long time to finish. And in this short manga, right, Toriyama realized that he can't do something like he would do in Dragon Ball. He can't, have characters have power up after power up. It's really just a bing bang boom. Bad guy arrives. We have to take care of bad guy. Let's move on to the next bad guy, right? Because he has a particular goal, which is to deal with the water scarcity problem within Sandland, right? So he has to move on, and I really appreciate that, right? And in that way, power dynamics are really clear, right? Like, we understand that demons are just flat out stronger than humans. There is no, crazy wiki page for the demons' power levels or the humans' power levels or anything like that. It is very straightforward. We don't have any of that. And you appreciate that because, right, it's 13 chapters. He doesn't have much time to go into, the complexities of abilities and things of that nature. So he's just like, hey, Prince is a really strong demon because he's the prince of demons, right? We don't really care about how strong his dad is because he doesn't add too much to the story outside of being, Demon King and Prince's father. And the important humans, right, in General Sheba, and in General Are, and the King, and characters like that are, they're as strong as they're supposed to be, right? We move on through General Sheba's battles with the King's army relatively quickly, and we move on with Prince's battles with the King's army relatively quickly. So I appreciate that a lot because pace is everything for me, and a lot of my other videos talk about pace and why why good pacing is an amazing thing. I want to say that in terms of the characters are great for the short manga story, right? We don't get too much out of them. I mean, I want to say that General Sheba is a great character, right? Insofar as this short manga form, right? And in terms of the short manga form that Toriyama is writing, because Toriyama isn't known for writing something like a Hunter x Hunter, Chimera Ant arc, or Osamu Tezuka's, Otakita Hito or anything like that. Like, he is just, really well known for writing, like, fun stories that deal with, certain topics in a very sort of straightforward way, for the most part. So the characters are really sort of reflective of that, right? General Sheba, he has a little bit of complexity in the sense that he is sort of trying to repent for the wrongs that he committed by bombing a village that was trying to solve the water scarcity problem, right? So in that sense, the narrative is, largely about that sort of penance. And Prince is just trying to have a good time, right? He's also, interested in solving this problem because he really just wants, humans and demons to sort of like get along insofar as they can, right? But he's a fun-loving guy. He's very much so in the vein. Not necessarily of a Goku because he's not that stupid, but in the vein that, his pure heart sort of allows him to make decisions quickly in terms of, one, wanting to fight the King's army to solve the water scarcity problem, and to, quickly befriend General Sheba, who he deems to be a good person, even though he's committed, like, a heinous act in the past. Also, characters like the King are relatively straightforward and simplistic, right? I mean, the King is, as General Sheba calls him, like, he's an idiot, right? He's a puppet king in the purest sense of the word. I can't remember the general's name, but the general that the sort of high supreme general that is in charge of the military power of the country of Sandland is pretty much so, like, not evil, but he's a terrible, human being, right? I'm not going to go into the complexities of what it means to be evil, but we do know that this supreme general is a horrible person, because he's the person that really came up with the plan of building a dam to monopolize the water within Sandland, to make sure that all of the money is solely coming to the government for the most part, and he just doesn't give a crap about anyone else. Characters like that are relatively straightforward. I mean, General Are is a character who has a straightforward sort of backstory, right? Like he's a military man who thought that he was doing the right thing, but then he realizes that the commander that he's working for, the Supreme General, actually was responsible for his father's death, his father who was also in the military, right? So there's a little bit of complexity there, but not much, right? We understand that, okay, he's going to want to take revenge, and he's going to end up being sort of turning towards the side of good, right? In the sense of Toriyama's Sandland story. So there's not a lot of moral complexity there, but the characters do what they need to do. They move the story in a relatively quick fashion, and it's like I'm always saying, like, pace is really important. And in a short story, you really have to know how to develop characters in a way that's both quick and relative and pretty interesting enough, so that we don't have to think about their complex character motivations and things of that nature. We just want to move on to the resolution as quickly as possible. So I think in that sense, Toriyama does a pretty great job of just developing these characters in a way that's entertaining and gets to the resolution of the story pretty fast. Yeah. So I especially love the art. I mean, I think the art is really one of the things. Well, it probably is the thing that makes the volume. I mean, there are moments where you just where splash pages just really knock your socks off. There's a moment where we find the Phantom, at least one of sort of the Phantom Lakes, but I would assume that this the first lake that they find is the Phantom Lake. And it's just like a beautiful combination of splash panels, right? That just take up, the full length of the volume in that sense. And you're just like, man, Toriyama is an artist, right? There may be moments where you're reading something like a Dragon Ball or a Dr. Slump, and especially maybe like a Dragon Ball Z, where you think, okay, the art, definitely drops it at moments. And you're not so sure whether you'd put Toriyama on the upper echelon of artists, maybe like a Taite Kubo, or the author of Berserk, right? The manga that draws Berserk. But Toriyama really does great things with this volume. I mean, they're that splash page in particular, and there's one other splash page where a sort of sand kind of centipede creature pops up out of nowhere, and it's really great the way that he sort of portrays these splash pages, right? Because splash pages, when they come, they should be a bit of a surprise. We should sort of be lulled into them so that we're not expecting them. And he does a really great job of that. Right before we see the lake in all its glory, where it's sort of still in the desert, there are a lot of rocks, things of that nature, and the environment is pretty boring to look at. And in the same way, before we see the sort of sand centipede, the environment's pretty boring to look at. There's, there aren't really any rocks or anything like that, but there's a little hole that General Shiba notices, and right as we move into the next page, bam, it just hits you. And it's just really great because you see that Toriyama is an artist that can hold his own weight, and you understand why he is such a national treasure in Japan, because the guy can draw and the guy can write stories, right? He's a great storyteller, and that artwork really comes through in terms of the storytelling and the way that he lulls us into these splash pages. And I think, we can't forget the tank, right? I mean, when you're looking at it, I think at that point is when you truly appreciate just how much time he spent, drawing the tank every time it appears. I mean, even the, small versions of the tank, like on the pages, are still very much so intricate. I'm not an artist, so I couldn't dream of doing anything like that without like years and years and years of, schooling or teaching or whatever. But I mean, just the amount of time that like it took to draw every little curve, and just drawing those like little like drawing like the wheels on the tank, and everything else just must have taken like so much time and effort. And you just and that really makes you appreciate not only mangakas but just like comic artists who are really taking the time out to create a great visually appealing work. And sometimes like you have people who clearly like who are readers, but they don't appreciate that stuff. And I, for one, I'm very, very much so appreciative of that, because one, I can't do that. I can't create my own work in that sense. But the fact that these people take the time to do that, really, really like outstanding. So overall, I mean, it's a great short read. It moves relatively quickly. I would bring it with me on a plane ride or a bus ride or a train ride if I needed to, read something for about like 2 hours or something like that, maybe 3 hours. I don't know. Whatever like your reading speed is. I don't know. Like it took me like roughly like 2.5 to 3 hours to sit and read it and finish it. But overall, it's a good story that deals with some morally and ethically like straightforward issues, and the characters are generally interesting and fun, and they keep your attention. And when the environments explode with artistic vigor, they really hit you. So overall, I'd give Sandland a 3 out of 5 out of 5. I mean, I don't usually do rankings like this or anything like that, but I mean, I know like some people, they need a ranking. They need to know, where I'd rank things out of like a scale of 5 or 10 or whatever. So I give it a 3 out of 5 out of 5. And on like a quick note, when you see the the Demon King in Sandland is clearly based off of the Demon King Deborah in Dragon Ball, and that was cool. I thought that like it was nice that like he clearly reused Deborah's aesthetic and character design to do that. And that was like a great nod. He's like, hey, like I'm still the author of Dragon Ball. This is blah blah blah. Don't forget about that when reading this work. And overall it's great. I enjoyed it. So this is the Black Manga Critic here with another video for you. And like, comment, and subscribe. I want to hear what you guys think. I want to hear what you guys think about the video, what you guys think about Sandland, any of Toriyama's other works. And yeah, that's it. So bye-bye.